doesn't do it. And that is why the Saudi Arabian Sheikh calls him an infidel. What do we find? He said Bilal was a black guy and treated with great respect. Bilal said to Abu Bakr, my dear friend, Sahih al-Bukhari says, 557.99, it says, Bilal, even up to the time of Abu Bakr, remained a slave. And that is very important for you to know. I don't care what he did. I don't care if he called people to pray. I don't care if he sung a few songs or any of those things. The question is, how did Muhammad treat him? Muhammad treated Bilal as a slave. So continued Abu Bakr. Muhammad was quite happy with this. He was quite happy with slaves continuing as slaves until the end of Islam, which is the end of times according to Islam, according to Muhammad, hijab and any other knowledgeable Muslim. So the problem is this. In Islam, blacks, unbelievers, especially women, are treated in a bad way. They are seen as cattle, pigs, all sorts of derogatory terms. This resulted in harsh treatments of sex torture. Female slaves were tortured. Quran Surah 4:24, Quran Surah 4 verse 3, Surah 4 Ayah 29 and so on. Please answer, Muhammad, if the Quran says that Muslims can take any of the captive women who their right hands possess and have sex with them at any stage, any stage. Do you agree with this? If you had a wife who is a non-Muslim, and if Muslims were to get hold of her and say, she is my captive, I can do what I want to do with her, will you be happy? I'm assuming you won't be. And therefore, you need to agree, Islam does terrible things with slaves.
I'm assuming.
Like I said earlier, Bilal, manumission, a great one of 5 pillars according to Muhammad. The problem, like I said earlier, Surah Sahih al-Bukhari 3765, Sahih al-Bukhari 557.99, both of them are against this. Slaves were asked to continue as slaves.
Alright, let's one more each, yeah? We don't want to spend like another 2 hours. I think it's settled after one. I'm gonna say this again. I have one, then you have one, and then I finish because you started. Okay?
Yes. So
so you. I'm gonna speak, then you, then I conclude, and then that's it. Yeah?
Okay.
Alright. Was that 2 rounds each?
No, one more.
Right.
Yeah,
so 424. وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. Where does it say you can have sex with slaves at any time and all the stuff that you're talking about? Doesn't say that at all. All it says is that you're not allowed to marry a woman who's married except what your right hand possesses. What your right hand possesses doesn't mean that you can have sex with them whenever you want. In fact, the idea of raping a woman, whether she is a slave or whether she's a wife, has been spoken about by the Salaf of this ummah, or the predecessors. Al-Shafi'i mentions it in Kitab al-Umm. Even Imam Malik mentions it, and the punishment of it is a corporal punishment, something like whipping and so on and so forth. So this is not something that Islam endorses at all, and the evidence of that is the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad where he says, La darar wa la dirar. You can't harm or reciprocate harm. How can you rape a woman, whoever she may be, in Islam without causing harm? So this is something that is completely falsehood, and it is a projection that he has of his own religion onto mine. Because the truth of the matter is, what we've said today is, number one, you have the verse in Numbers 31:18. We have Deuteronomy 21:10. We have Exodus that we've spoken about. We've spoken about, and there's other verses. There are so many of them that I can't even enumerate them in the short space that I have today. They have been understood by biblical commentators, both Jewish and Christian, aforetime, including those writers of the Jerusalem Talmud and others, as meaning captivity and genocide. And that's why sophisticated theologians of the 21st century and even the 20th century admit this candidly. They admit this candidly, and therefore they make some excuse to disband in the Old Testament, and they try and pretend as if it doesn't exist. The truth of the matter is, if you believe Jesus is God, then he is inseparable from the Old Testament authorship. which means he is the one who commanded Moses to do all of those things. If he is the God, he's the one who commanded the people to genocide. He is the one who commanded the people to enslave and so on and so forth. He is the one who said, here's your money when it comes to beating and abusing the slaves, and so on and so forth. These verses have had no good response today. Bilal did not remain a slave for all of Islam. This is a falsehood. In fact, that's impossible. He married Hala bint Auf and he gave her a mahar, and she was a free woman and he was a free man. This was absolutely established in the Sunnah, and he had children with her, and those children were in fact half white, half black, half Arab. Nobody ostracized him except that they would meet the reprimand of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as in the case of Abu Dharr al-Ghafari in the well-known hadith. So therefore, this notion that Islam is a racist religion is something you cannot substantiate. Moreover, it's something you will not be able to find in the Bible a single verse which has condemnatory tone or an explicit remark relating to racism being a bad thing. So what have we established today? Number one, the Quran has an emancipatory discourse, as mentioned in chapter 90, and as mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah, and as mentioned in chapter 24 verse 33. We have mentioned that there are opinions of the Salaf that say that a slave can literally force themselves out of slavery through ransom. It's called mukataba. فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا. That give them mukataba, ransom, if they know good, if you know good in them. And according to Al-Qurtubi, that some Salaf said this is by way of wujub, which means it's obligatory, even if the slave master didn't want it. Which is, if this opinion is respected, as good as abolition. This is as good as abolition. If this opinion is not respected, then it's not. He talked about Shaykh Salah al-Fawzan. I'll mention that in the conclusion.
Yes, start. Okay, all Muslims have a very important question to ask today. On the one hand, you have the Bible. A claim is made that Islam and the Bible, New Testament and the Old Testament are Abrahamic in origin. But what we find are clear differences. In the Bible, we don't talk about racism. We don't talk about abolishing of slavery in the way that he wants them to be spoken of, because the Bible never had slavery like what Islam ever had. What you find in the Bible is the story of God empathizing with slaves, the nation of Israel, redeeming them and leading them on to freedom. This is the story asked. And on the back of that, God in the Bible says, Exodus 22:21, he says, not to mistreat a stranger or oppress him, because you yourselves were strangers in Egypt. So across the Bible, what you find is God of the Bible demanding fair treatment of everyone, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, language spoken and so on. And God is seen as God who is impartial in the Bible. And I asked Muhammad multiple times, can you show me a place where women were taken as sex captives? And he couldn't show that. All that he's talking about are a few places where there was political war and entire people groups were asked to be wiped out by God. Now God, my God, God of the Bible judges. If he has a problem with that, well, I can only say judgment is coming. And a few of these judgments came in the past, Amalekites and so on. Judgments came. In contrast, what do you find in Islam? In Islam, Islam clearly says that the black people are not worth as much as the Arabs. One Arab guy is worth two black guys. Black people are like raisin heads, unbelievers are like cattle and so on. And this resulted in very harsh treatments. Sex torture of female slaves, you find in various portions of the Hadith and Quran, 4:3, 4:24, Surah Al-Kubra, 2:227 and so on. Multiple places you find sex torture of female slaves, Umar torturing female slaves. No rights being given. Quran, Surah 16, Ayah 75 says, slaves control nothing, no right whatsoever. And that free men cannot be punished for the murder of a slave. Quran, Surah 2, Ayah 178. Also repeated in Tafsir Jalalain. So the point is,
I know it's about.
torture of sex slaves, no rights. Free men are not equal to the slaves. So clearly no equal treatment. And this therefore resulted in Muhammad not permitting or not allowing manumission to happen. Sahih al-Bukhari 55799, 3765. You find Bilal continuing as a slave. If Bilal says this to Abu Bakr, if you have bought me for yourself, Sahih al-Bukhari 55799, if you have bought me for yourself, then keep me for yourself. But if you have bought me for Allah's sake, then leave me for Allah's work. He is pleading. This great guy, who is the one who calls people into pray for prayer, he is pleading. If you have bought me for the sake of Allah, leave me alone. But you are still keeping me as a slave. So Muhammad continuing to keep people as slaves. Sahih al-Bukhari 3765, 5541 and so on. Slaves working for Muhammad.
Time. You know, he said that the Quran says that disbelievers are like cattle. It doesn't say that. It says, بَلْ هُمْ إِلَّا كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. That they are like cattle. No. They are more astray than the cattle. And as we've seen today...
Worse than cattle. Worse than cattle.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? As we've seen today, when the truth... Okay, be quiet now, please. Don't waste my time. As we've seen today, everybody, we have seen today that is the case. You're presented with straight facts and you cannot maneuver away from them. You cannot circumnavigate them. You cannot deal with them. You cannot hermeneutically, acrobatically, gymnastically get away from them. And the reality of the situation is you're dealt with the blunt truth in front of your face as clear as the day, and you're just scurrying, scared, and anxious like me without a pen in my hand, knowing your scriptures more than you and knowing my scriptures more than you'll ever know, dealing with you in the way that I've dealt with you. The truth of the matter is it was actually abrogated. Chapter 2 verse 178 was abrogated with the ayat which is talking an eye for an eye, number one. So that's and it wasn't what he thought it meant anyway, but it was abrogated in either event. Number one. Point number two, you keep mentioning Bilal. Yeah. Bilal was not a slave when he married Hala bint Auf. He was not a slave when he was literally ascending the Kaaba, telling the people, I'm in charge now, reciting the call to prayer in front of all the Arabs who are literally below him in physical stature. How dare you talk about Bilal in that manner when the Prophet said he will be the one, he can hear his footsteps in Jannah. The things that he said about all the hadiths about black people being in hell, every single one of them is false. None of those hadiths use the word black, none of them. In fact, like I said, the opposite is true. We have explicit statements from the Prophet saying there's no virtue over a black man over a white man, or a white man over a black man, an Arab over a non-Arab. There is no such statement in the Bible. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, we find these genocides of the Amalekites, who he admits to. He says this is them asking for it, basically. We want to be destroyed. No one asked for genocide, sorry to say. This is the kind of kalam that we find the Israelis doing with the Palestinians, inspired by that horrible Old Testament narrative. Moreover now, let's be honest and say that even the New Testament, Jesus calling a non-Jewish person a dog. Yes, at the end of it, he said, okay, I'll give you whatever you want. But he still called her a dog because she was a Gentile. That's racism. Your book is fraught, saturated, filled, contaminated, polluted. It is seeping, brimming with racism, brimming with genocide, brimming with racism. You need us, my friend. We don't need anything from you. You come to us and you ask us, why was everything abrogated in the way it was? Because the Prophet Muhammad eliminated racism, the only person in his time to do so, and it was the only emancipatory discourse of any Abrahamic religion in the world, that is Islam. Come to it and stop being arrogant.
All right, thank you very much, Muhammad. Let's try and deal.
That was good.
Yeah.
Wow. That was amazing. Oh, no answer. طيب.
Please.
No, that's it.
All the Muslims who would like to challenge that further, please come over here.
Do your homework first.
Please come over here.
Go do your homework first.
Please come over here.
How are you, man? You finished here, man. Good.
Shoot, 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 what I do. Na 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 na. Shoot, shoot.
إذا أعجبك الفيديو لا تنسى الإعجاب والتعليق، ولكي يصلك كل جديد اشترك الآن.